Hey, did you guys see what that comic book's selling for on eBay? I'm serious, guys. Go see what this is selling for on eBay right now. It's selling for 50 bucks. That thing is selling for 150 bucks. I can't believe those are selling for $200. Hi, I'm Christopher, aka the Bronze Age Nerd. Welcome to my third installment in a series of videos I like to call Lies That Comic Collectors Tell. In this particular video, we're going to be discussing the lie of how much a comic is selling for. What I'm basically going to explore is this idea that you hear when somebody says, hey, this hot new comic book is selling for X amount of dollars. I see this in Discord servers, in Instagram chats about, that new book that hit the trending 20 or whatever all the time, or some new, FOC book that came out finally and popped off because it was low ordered, or there's a first appearance that people didn't know about. And I go and check it out. I run to the first place where I check out brand new comic listings, and that's eBay. And I look at the sold listings. And wait a minute, it's not selling for what those people said it was. So I do the next thing, which is I go to the listings and I sort by highest price. And that's where I find the prices that they're talking about. So to be clear, what's going on here is people are talking about what people have listed the item for, usually buy it now or a high starting bid. And that's what it's selling for. Shout out to Big Russ. We were talking about this a little bit, and he kind of pointed out a semantics issue that I kind of noticed. And to me, I've always discounted it, but I understand that some people see that those items are listed for that amount, and their interpretation of that is that they are selling for that amount. I completely disagree. And, Russ and I talked about this. He knows I was going to make this video and everything, so no worries there. But I completely disagree with that particular set of logic. If something is selling for that amount, that means that it has sold for that amount, and that is the current FMV for that comic book, or at least the last sold or one of the most recent solds. You get what I'm saying, right? Like, it had to have actually sold to be selling. And this is where we get tied up into words. Let's say I picked up 10 copies of a hot comic book and I list it for $100. And my copies are the only copies listed on eBay. And they're listed for $100 each, but none of them sell. Is that comic book selling for $100, or is it just listed for $100? I'd argue it's just listed for $100. Okay, let's say I have my 10 copies up at $100 each, and one person comes along and sells a comic book at $70. Now that comic book is selling for $70, but it was the only copy available and it's sold out. So now are those other copies selling for $100 or what? Really, you can interpret that however you like. If you want to say that something is listed for $100 or offered up for sale for $100, that means it's selling for $100. That's fine. But I think that it creates a really large amount of confusion. People freak out when they see that's selling for $200. We're a group of people that reads the headline and not the articles. So when we hear that, a lot of people don't go and check on their own. And all of a sudden now that book is worth $200 in their mind. And most people are outraged because it's silly, because of course that book isn't actually selling for $200. Or even worse, they go out and buy a bunch of copies for close to that price because they think this book is red hot. Do you see where we're getting into a tricky territory here? So my advice is, whenever you see the term selling, do your own research. Here's where it's really hard to do your own research. Let's say that you're in a live selling platform like a Whatnot auction. Well, now you've got a real problem when the seller is sitting there telling you, I checked eBay earlier, this book is selling for $100. Well, maybe it is selling for $100. Maybe it's selling for $10. Maybe it's selling for $200. You don't know. And if you're taking their word for it, you're making a big mistake. I sell on, live auctions all the time. And when I do that, most of the time, I'm usually aware of what the price of a book is, like the current FMV, like maybe the 30-day FMV for that book. Because what I do is I go to eBay, I sort by sold listings, and I see, okay, let's take an average of the last 5 or 10 sales and see about where this book is sitting. Now, I happen to be very honest when I offer up that price. And what I usually do is knock off 5 to 10% if I feel like this is a book that I just want to sell. If I want to make sure that I get top dollar for it, I sell it at that same price, and that's what I sell it for. But I also would encourage everybody watching my auctions to have like an eBay sold listings tab open in another window and do their own due diligence. If you don't agree that the price is what I'm saying it is, you shouldn't buy it for that price. This to me is one of the biggest, subtle driving factors of FOMO. First of all, never take a seller's word for what a book is selling for. Second of all, where are they getting their numbers? Because if they're just looking at eBay sold and they're taking the highest sold price for the last 6 months, That's a problem. If you guys watch my price check videos where I go back and look at my top 5 not to buy lists, I use a variety of places. One of them is eBay sold listings. One of them is Cover Price, Go Collect, ComicsPriceGuide.com, and Overstreet Access. And I used all those numbers to kind of create an amalgam of what the current FMV for a book is. You don't necessarily have to go that hog wild, but you have to remember even that amount of data doesn't actually tell you all the recent sales for a book. There are tons of face-to-face sales, sales that happen in local comic shops. Those sales are not captured in any way, shape, or form. I mentioned Whatnot earlier. Those listings are never captured. Like, we have no idea what books sell for on Whatnot unless you happen to watch the auctions and pay attention to what items go for. And that brings me to the final point I'll make here. You see these crazy screenshots floating around all the time of people being like, I can't believe somebody just paid for this in a Whatnot auction. That book is worth nowhere near that. Okay, so in that screenshot, is that book now selling for that amount of money? Well, in a way it is, for sure. That's definitely a sale as long as the transaction went through, as long as it wasn't a shill bidder trying to drive the price up, those kinds of things, right? As long as that's not what's happening, yeah, the book sold for that amount. But is that consistent across other ways that that book could be sold, like such as eBay or on those other avenues I mentioned before? So let's say that same seller throws up another copy of that book 10 minutes later in their auction, and everyone's thinking, gosh, that last one went for $235. I'm a fool if I don't buy this for $235. Well, if you're only buying that because you want to sell it down the road, be very mindful of the fact that a lot of Whatnot sellers that have this kind of cult of personality around them, that is the highest that book will ever go for. There are tons of sellers that I watch on Whatnot or that I hear stories or accounts of where they sold a book for that price and a month later they're selling the exact same book because they had multiple copies for a 10% of what that book went for. Also, take any of those hot Whatnot exclusives that kind of tend to pop off on the platform and try to track those sales on eBay. You're going to see that they don't actually sell for anywhere near what they do on Whatnot. So it's something you need to be very careful of. So this is my favorite kind of lie that collectors tell because it's a lie we tell ourselves. It's a lie that we see other collectors perpetuating in the hobby, and we always need to be mindful of it and keep an eye out for it. And remember to do that kind of reality check when you're thinking about what the value of a comic book is. And remember, do that kind of value check mentally when you think about what an FMV for a comic book might be. My advice is to never buy a comic book in a high pressure environment at all because you are more likely to decide, I don't want to miss out on this potential deal. And yeah, missing out on a comic book sucks, but so does losing a lot of money that you could have put towards comic books that you want more. I want to take a second at the end of this video to thank all my channel members. They're a huge help to me and what I do. Thank you so much for your support. Their names are listed on the screen right now. If you want your name added to that list, there is a join button down below in the description. And I also want to thank you for watching this video. I'll catch you in the next one, and until next time, I want to remind you, as always, hey, 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 hey. Read comics every day. Hey, did you guys see what that comic book's selling for on eBay? Yo, see what this is selling for over on eBay right now. That thing's selling for 150 bucks. That thing is selling for 150 bucks. That thing is selling for 150 bucks.